use metaphors and try to explain them in different kinds of words. So he would say, if we must die, we die defending our rights. So each man, no matter who it is, must fight for their own will. So in order to do this, it's whoever fights has to have it in their right. They want to do it and their morals. He also would use such as every man should not be for evil or for foes. So every man should be their own person. And he also used to say how the white man controls our footsteps, which means that they shouldn't control their footsteps because every person should have their own path of how they take their ways.
This is Sitting Bull. This one right here is Sitting Bull, and then over there that's him and another white man. Why do you think those two are in the same picture together?
Does the pilgrims had dinner with the Indians?
Well, yeah, it's kind of. But you guys, like, you can see the two different ways, like how they dress, and then basically how like their stance and stuff. Hate these words about Native Americans that they talk about the white man and like how the white man didn't understand the land how as the Native Americans did. Native Americans will like hunt for buffalo, and when they hunt for buffalo, they use like every part of the buffalo. But then when the Europeans came, they like picked and choose what part of the buffalo that they thought was useful to them.
Here's a little background about like how the Native Americans were before the Europeans came. Basically, millions of Native Americans have lived throughout North America, Central and South America. Tribes could be found all throughout, and many of these tribes believe in the power of nature and base much of their religion off of these beliefs. Symbolism, especially with animals, is often a common part of Native American religion. Animals were used to represent certain ideas, characteristics, and spirits. Animism was a commonly shared doctrine or belief of the indigenous people and various Indian tribes in North America. Native Americans had a great appreciation to nature's beauty, which is why they loved the land and respected it so much. Many tribes were based off of hunting for food and growing their own food. Many different regions had different customs and beliefs, as well as a wide range of languages. And many times fighting would occur amongst the tribes over land or other disputes that they may have arisen among them. First encounters with Europeans began with Christopher Columbus landing on an island in the Caribbean. This voyage was due to an ultramarine route to India, but the Europeans did not anticipate that there existed land across the Atlantic. Once contact was made with the New World, colonization soon followed after Spain made first contact. Natives believed land was not owned, but there is no private property in land. The idea that it could be bought and sold was unacceptable. This colonization effort led to fighting with many of the Native Americans, and many of them became slaves. Many natives died from fighting along with new diseases and had to relocate as colonization grew. This has been a bloody time for both sides, but the biggest losses were with the Native Americans.
This is the.
Guys, can you let him through, please?
The Indians have many chiefs, so like different tribes and stuff.
And here's a quote from an Arikara chief. It says, "What is to say for whilst the swift in the hunt, to the end of living and the beginning of survival." Basically, the Native Americans believed that the white men came to bring destruction to all tribes and mainly to the nature. Before the men from Europe came, they had been living in a place where every living creature is respected and does not harm the land. The people who have contaminated the land are the white men, and they brought destruction to it. The people who have they brought diseases, started killing the animals, and destroying trees. All men are in this land and not to live, but to survive. The white men do not understand the natives' views towards nature. Since the Europeans came to America, life has changed to Native Americans. Squamish and Duwamish, they were, or this was a chief from the tribe called Seattle. Basically, this chief talked back to what the tribes used to be, saying, a few more hours, a few more winters, and none of the children of the great tribes that once lived on this earth, or that roamed in small bands in the woods, will be left to mourn the graves. If a people once as powerful and as hopeful as yours. Here the chief explains how his people were once just as great and as ambitious as the Europeans, but are now slowly dying and fading away. The chief goes on to continue talking about what the Europeans are doing to the land by asking, and what is to say farewell to the swift and the high, to the end of living and the beginning of survival. In his eyes, the Europeans have taken so much from the land that there won't be anything left to hunt. The natives will be left to only managing to survive, as their way of life is to be stripped of them.
He's saying something. The white people think we have no brain in our heads. They are great and powerful, and that makes them make war with us. We are but a little handful to what you are. But remember, when you hunt for a rattlesnake, you usually cannot find it, and perhaps it will bite you before you see it. He thinks that some older, wiser people, but
when the Galaxy Note launched in 2011, it was ahead of its time. And naturally, when things are new and different, sometimes people aren't ready for them. Experts saw the bigger screen and were like, "You look like you're talking into a piece of toast."
So this is what the whites did to the Native Americans. The Native Americans, however, did not stand for this type of treatment. Seems like each of those people sneak at something completely different. And what it sounds like it means, but it's exactly what it means. When you hunt for a rattlesnake, you usually cannot find it. Perhaps it will bite you before you see it. Meaning the whites won't be able to find them, but they will find the whites. Another quote. I have red skin, but my grandfather was a white man. What does it matter? It is not the color of skin that makes me good or bad. The skin color does not define if he is good or bad. It is the actions which show us who he really is. The Europeans view the natives as savages and unintelligent. They question their beliefs and view toward the other. They believe each native are wrong and inferior. Since natives are a different race, Europeans compare them as inferior and uncivilized humans. The natives view the Europeans as destructive animals that came to own the land and destroy its nature. Because the Europeans did not respect the natives, they cannot live with them. Their views are what makes not come together to respect and solve each other's problems. Both sides can argue the reasons for how they are considered bad men. However, the reasons for them to be either bad or good is not for their skin, but for the actions they make toward one another.
You guys are under 2 minutes.
Continue to contaminate your own bed, and you will one night suffocate in your own waste. This is a quote from the beginning of our section, which is "Eat these words." This quote explains much of what the Native Americans thought of the Europeans. It goes on to explain how the Europeans were basically contaminating the land, which did not belong to them. That's why the Native Americans were didn't really believe in what they stood for. So the things that they stood for isn't what the Europeans liked about them. They believed it is later they would destroy themselves under their own actions. Native Americans had lost so much of their land due to the actions of the Europeans.
These are our references.
Okay. Thank you. You're right at 10:05. Trinity, do you not like this fun stuff? What am I doing wrong?
I'm not good with iPads.
Ice bath.